It was a lovely occasion for us to come together as a church family. Indeed, sharing hope, sharing peace, and most importantly, sharing love. We had our communion service and our installation of yours truly. And my address is one which I'll be repeating as I go around our congregations. Indeed, you're lucky to hear it today. Our good friend of All Souls, the Reverend Linda Kane, was also installed beside me as clerk of our denomination. So All Souls this year has provided in from its training the clerk and our moderator, and as you quite rightly said, and a previous moderator in the Reverend Chris Hudson. But I want to take this opportunity as I go round the churches at the start of my term to thank the Reverend Lena Cockcroft for her 2-year term and the very Reverend Robert McKee for his work as clerk over the past 9 years. Indeed, Robert, I believe, has been part of our denomination for over 60 years. On Wednesday, we then moved on to our business meeting, where we heard our reports, passed a number of resolutions. I have to make sure not say motions, but we passed a number of resolutions. And we had some vibrant discussion, all very good-natured, all very hopeful. But those discussions, as one minister said to me, now need to be put into practice. And I suppose that's where the role of moderator will come in. It is a ceremonial role as well as an administrative role, as I would call it. I get to don the guard and attend the annual Remembrance Day service at City Hall, along with many other services throughout the island of Ireland. And I have to say I'm really honoured to be the 70th moderator of the non-subscribing Presbyterian Church of Ireland. And if I've got my history right, the 56th minister to hold this role since it was created in 1910. So Tuesday night was a very momentous day for many reasons. I need not go into them all. I'm sure you can understand why it was a historical occasion for me to be elected moderator. But I'm the first moderator in many years who's not in a full-time charge. And therefore, I have a secular job, as you all know. And I'm sure that will bring challenges in terms of time commitment and attendance at events. But I'm sure that that's going to be a way forward in the years to come. Churches will be able to sustain full-time ministers. Indeed, I'm probably the first what's called non-stipendiary minister to hold the role as moderator. But I may stand to be corrected. And for those who don't understand non-stipendiary, it means I don't get paid for the minister's work. I've thought much about what I want to achieve in my term as moderator. I'm taking the theme, sharing God's love together. Psalm 133 reminds us how wonderful and pleasant it is when brothers and sisters live together in harmony. Remembering that a harmony is a pleasing combination of different parts. Will we as a denomination live up to that in Psalm 133? Unfortunately, we don't always live together in harmony. But that's something I would like to see and try and include, that we work together based on sharing God's love together in my term. We're a liberal, free-thinking Christian church, but what does that actually mean? As non-subscribers, it's good to question. Well, when I look up the dictionary, liberal means to respect or accept behaviours or opinions different from one's own, open to new ideas. I certainly believe as a denomination we've drifted from this basis, or at least that respect for each other to have different behaviours and different opinions. We're a broad church family, but being a broad church brings its own challenges. We're not always right, although some people believe they are always right. I may be the right reverend for this year, doesn't always mean I'm right all the time. Some people don't want to hear other views. They're not open to other interpretations or other opinions. That's something we all need to work out if we truly want to live up to Psalm 133, that we all live together in harmony. In preparing to take up the moderator's role, I decided to read the Reverend Dr. John Nelson's A Short History of the Non-Subscribing Presbyterian Church of Ireland. So it came on holidays with me in May as I celebrated my 50th birthday. And as I read it, I realised that down through the centuries, we haven't always seen eye to eye as a denomination. There's been splits with congregations of differences of opinion, and sometimes, I dare say, not even understanding why we fell out in the first place. But I can think of families like that. So why shouldn't our church family be any different? When I look back at 1857 and the mentions of a number of our churches, but the one particularly about Carrickfergus, the scene of a violent physical dispute over the possession of the meeting house. I hope we never get into rows over things like that. But reading from the words of Dr. Nelson himself, such conflicts and danger to bitterness between congregations and ministers, which continued as long as some of those involved remained alive, leaving the denomination weak and ineffective. The whole business was acutely embarrassing and exposed non-subscribers to the ridicule of their opponents. In Carrickfergus, the ones inflicted proved ultimately to be fatal, as that congregation no longer exists. Elsewhere, those differences resulted in the weakening of numbers, a loss of prestige as people walked away from conflict, which they either did not understand or which they felt was out of keeping with the peace and the dignity of a Christian church. We today, some 167 years from that episode, we've had splits since then. Changes in congregations to presbyteries, changes to presbyteries themselves. But I believe our system of governance, that has always been that system of Presbyterian governance, in which each court accedes to a higher court. Every minister, when they're ordained, I did so here many years ago, makes vows according to our code of conduct. We are a free-thinking church. Now, a free thinker is a person who rejects accepted opinions, especially concerning religious belief. We don't follow the flow. We each are called to think for ourselves. That's what our non-subscription is. I believe we've lost some of that liberal, free-thinking faith from those who went before. We're more than ever a diverse bunch of people. But we don't seem to have that respect for that liberal, free thinker in many of our congregations. I have observed the great work being done on the ground in our congregations by the people without a collar. It is to be commended. It is to be continued and celebrated and shared among us. And at our business meeting on Wednesday, we heard of a number of initiatives. We heard of the 4 churches, Belfast churches, which we're part of, and the number of events we've done there. We heard about work being undertaken by our Newry congregation in trying to work out their future and indeed bring along young people and teenagers. We heard about our new denominational magazine and the opportunity to share all the work that we do with each other in that magazine, as well as in social media. We have many opportunities. We heard of the coming of age service that our Dublin congregation has for teenagers. And sadly, we also heard of the despair in Cork following their fire. So it was an opportunity to bring together all that is good in our denomination. We sometimes forget that we aren't a congregation on its own. There are 31 other congregations right alongside us. Our Presbyterian system of governance, as I said, we have moved from what our code would state. Indeed, some would criticise us that we've moved from our Christian belief. Not so. Not in the same way that the system of governance seems to have gone. We have much which unites us, and so we need to work on that together. Over my term, I believe we'll have many discussions on our way forward, but time is pressing. I believe we need to stop burying our heads in the sand, stop kicking the can down the road so that we can work together. Or maybe brothers and sisters will not be able to work together in harmony. And if that is the case, we need to work out how we manage that in a respectful manner, but in line with our code and our governance and our courts. We have seen how businesses, shops, bars, restaurants have closed due to falling income and customers. You can see that weekly in the news, and our churches are following the same path. We need to review much of how we operate as a denomination to ensure we comply with good governance, with openness and with transparency. And at our business meeting on Wednesday, we passed a number of resolutions to see that happen with regards to safeguarding, with regards to financial reporting, with regards to our Widows Fund. We have tough decisions to make, but we need to start soon. Or in my opinion, in 5 to 10 years, we will see little of this fine denomination left, with only a scattering of churches that can support themselves. That is certainly not what I would want, and I believe it's not what many of our congregations want. Our clergy have changed over the last number of years, coming from various backgrounds, bringing new ideas, new energy, blending the past with the future. Some of these relationships have worked, and sadly some haven't, and have caused hurt on both sides, something which we need to address and learn from for our future. There is a place, a real need for a liberal, free-thinking voice in our broken world, if we really live up to what that means. The faith of our forefathers have much to be positive about. We need to harness that, work together, and share God's love together. When I think of our denomination, I think of the song 40 Shades of Green. And in particular, I know you're singing it over in your head, 40 Shades of Green. I'd walk from Cork to Larne to see the 40 Shades of Green. And no, as moderator, I don't intend to do that as a fundraising, walking from Cork to Larne, even as a fundraiser for the devastation caused in our Cork church. But I certainly will be visiting as many of our churches as I can. In our denomination, we're made up of more than those 40 shades. And when I think of that image in my head, it's of a patchwork quilt. It reminds me of a blanket I had as a child where my mum had knitted together different coloured squares and then sewn them into a blanket. But when you pull all those pieces together, just look at the wonderful piece of work that you have. Whether that be a patchwork quilt, or whether that be a picture you have of those 40 shades of green in the fields, we need to re-knit that quilt together, not pull it apart. We're too small a denomination to do that. I'm looking forward to my term ahead. I'm looking forward to getting out and seeing our congregations, whether officially or unofficially. And I set this challenge on Tuesday night. I would encourage you to do the same. Go to another congregation that isn't your own. See how they worship. See how similar they are or how different they are. Open your mind to light from other quarters, as our code says. It's going to be my intention to organise a number of social events during my term to bring us together as a family, as a church family. I would ask you to support them, rekindle some lost relationships, and I know All Souls is never short of ideas for a social event. For example, when I look around our denomination and look at the work our women have undertaken, working across congregations and presbyteries to do amazing work, I would like to see that develop for our young people. I would like to see that developed amongst our elders. And I dearly pray that we will work amongst our clergy and not be, as the Reverend Dr. Nelson described in the 1850s, that their disagreement continued as long as they were alive. But we need to have amongst the clergy a respect for those different views in this denomination. It's what part of being a liberal, free-thinking church brings with it. It will be my intention to bring the experience which I've gained in the secular world, managing change, dealing with difficult situations, chairing meetings, being able to find solutions to problems. I hope that you and the rest of the congregations in the denomination will work alongside me to see the plans happen. They're starting to come into place already. Work has been done in the background before I even took up office. The plans are those of the people on the ground. Our Christian Ministries Committee, for example, have agreed to review and are working on a new lay preachers course, which will help support our clergy. That will be brought to next year's General Synod. This year there'll be a ministers' conference for ministers to come together, but for the first time there'll also be an elders' event where elders can come and share experience. Sometimes elders can feel isolated, not sure how to deal with problems. And so this will be an opportunity for elders from different congregations to come together. In September, the Sunday School and Youth Committee will be holding a discussion for all those involved in our youth work to see what the future is. You can see how our young people all across the denomination are falling. And it's interesting to see what Dublin and what Newry are trying to do for that teenage range. We're reviewing how we conduct our ecumenical relationships, and it was lovely to have the President of the General Assembly of Unitarian and Free Christians at Banbridge on Tuesday and Wednesday to share with us. And it's been lovely discussing how we can try and work a little bit better together. As you know, Linda studied at the Unitarian College, and also then we have a student from Dublin studying there as well. I sought and gained permission to set up a monitorial advisory committee. That's going to be made up of people from all across our denomination who I can seek counsel and advice from during my term of office, to look at those issues which affect us and to look at a way forward and bring those discussions to GPC and General Synod. The name of the committee should not be lost. We still remember the Reverend Mac with affection, his wise counsel, and someone whom many of us would have sought advice from. So calling it the Mac is a fitting tribute to the Reverend Mac. Jeremiah reminds us, "Know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." So let us all share God's love together. I pray we're all given a fresh understanding as we've just sang. Let there be peace, let there be joy, let there be hope shared among us, but most importantly, love, for that is the greatest commandment, to love one another. Amen.